Hi, I'm Susie Morgan, founder and director of training at Precision EMDR Academy. And I want to talk today about something that makes me feel a little bit like watching one of those horror movies. And you're like, don't go into the garage. Don't go into the garage. They're going into the garage. Don't go into the garage. And they go anyways. This is what it is. It's about consultation towards certification after basic training. So what I want to do is I want to talk about how it feels to be able to see from kind of a bird's eye view as a trainer what people can and cannot take away from basic training that's enough for them. And so when people are wandering out into the wild, I feel like it's like going into the garage, like after basic training. And so I want to explain that a little bit more. And then I want to talk about why I think consultation really matters the way it does, and then how I do consultation and some of the components that I think are pretty critical. So for two reasons. One is, maybe you'll want to come and do consultation with me or someone on my team, but also as you're shopping for a consultant or as you are a consultant yourself in this field, I want you to keep these things in mind because it could be really helpful for you in finding the right fit for you as you seek what you need in your journey as an EMDR therapist. So let's start by talking about why I feel like it is so hard to watch people leave basic training and not jump right into certification. The bottom line is that basic training is just simply not enough. It is 6 days. And yes, then there's also 10 hours of consultation. But there are so many questions, so many new concepts. It's a full paradigm shift if it's done well. And so there's techniques, there's applications, there's case conceptualization, readiness, target sequence planning, and then what do you do when the processing is going smoothly? Like first you have to learn that, and then what do you do when it gets blocked and why it gets blocked? And we're not typically treating people with simple PTSD. We're typically treating people with layers of trauma, a kaleidoscope of symptoms. There's so much that they are dealing with, and we have to do that justice, both to make the work we do safe and to make it effective. And so when I am doing a basic training, I am really doing everything I can to provide a foundation that is much more robust than what I got when I was originally trained, but is also much more robust than I see a lot of my consultants walk in with. At least I saw that over the years. And yet I still know it can never be enough to do a thorough job in that constricted of a setting, because this is an entire psychotherapy and we are working with real human beings. And so we've gone back and forth with my team of saying, okay, could we start consultation a little bit later during the process? Could we extend it out further after the training? Could we do this? Could we do that? What can we do to help our students metabolize the information they need and then have the support that they need to be provided while they start to implement this and integrate it into their practices? And the bottom line is we need to start consultation at the beginning because there's so many questions. There's so many questions about navigating who you can get started with, how you get started, how to actually do these things. And then there's so many questions just each step along the way as they get an additional piece of information from the training, an additional layer of how-tos and conceptualization and all that stuff from the training. So we can't short shrift them at the beginning, but also if we extend it out, people oftentimes still are not going to have it be long enough to really serve what they need. The bottom line is basic training is just a foundation. It does not provide fluency. And what's necessary for fluency is continuing on in training and consultation. And it's my belief that going out of, basic training into the wild and not jumping straight into a consultation group, a certification process, ultimately is like walking into that garage, because what's going to happen is now you have people's lives in your hands, and there is so much to this work and there is so much to what they've been through that you need support. And a lot of times you don't even know the questions you'll have until you get this new client or that new client. And so it takes having support over time, inadequate support. So if we just eked out the basic training consultation longer, it would be inadequate in terms of dosing, essentially. So anyways, what I strongly believe is that our culture of us as EMDR therapists needs to change. There needs to be a really strong messaging, I think, that says, yes, basic training is the basics. And technically you are at that point EMDR trained, but it's not enough. And so what should come next is directly beelining yourself into a consultation situation so that you can be really getting that fluency, getting those sea legs, getting those eyes to see the nuances that you need to see and the skills you need to have as you're navigating every complexity and nuance of what's walking in your door. So how do you change a culture? It's not even like EMDRIA is the only game in town. We have non-EMDRIA approved trainings that require less than what EMDRIA requires. EMDRIA sets a certain standard, but even that, there's a variety pack of levels of training that you can get even within the EMDRIA approved standards. So what we do in our program is we structure it so that we meet EMDRIA standards. We teach you standard protocol, Francine Shapiro's standard protocol, and we do so in the required structure and meet those benchmark baseline standards of an EMDRIA approved training so that we are teaching you all of the ins and outs of the technique and then adding and deepening into that with an emphasis on readiness, really in-depth aspects of target sequence planning, mapping trauma memory networks, really paying attention to attachment from the beginning, and then, addressing all the things that we're supposed to do in a basic training. So we have, application to various diagnoses and populations and things like that. I'm a big fan of what we do according to EMDRIA standards and how we go beyond that. But beyond that, you need to know where to go next. You need to know how to deepen next. So when our students have completed basic training, what we do is we suggest that they join a consultation group. And we really have certain emphases in the way that we conduct consultation as a team at Precision EMDR. And it is unique to each individual on our team. So I'll mostly speak to my own self, but our overall sense is that this role is a mentorship. This role is not just, I'm going to help you check the boxes. It's no, I'm going to teach you how to think in EMDR. I want to teach you how to dance in EMDR. I want to teach you how to be so fluent that you can really understand exactly what you're doing and why, and be able to articulate that to your clients so that it can be truly trauma-informed treatment, in that they have a voice and choice in their care that is an educated voice and choice in their care. And so to do that, we have to provide certain things. This whole idea of what's really important about basic training and then beyond really came home in the last couple of days, because I was speaking to actually 3 different consultees and I almost had the identical conversation. And all 3 of them had been through basic training, and then it had been some years before they were embarking into the certification process. And as they were joining our consultation groups, they were realizing, whoa, there is a lot I still need to learn here. And it was disturbing for them. And of course they personalized it and thought like they're the only one. And instead I was able to say like, no, like your story is not unique. What happens is you get this idea from basic training that that's kind of all it is. And then there's kind of this wide world of things you really need to know, but no one's giving you kind of firm and or clear direction in terms of this is the path that you can walk in order to gain competence and to gain confidence. And so I've been talking to them about, what are the different components that we have with the consultation towards certification process that can really help shore them up. So I want to talk to you about kind of what those are. First of all, I think it is really important to provide an educational component that is on purpose that goes alongside your consultation. So years ago, I started to see patterns with my consultees. I've been a consultant for 15 years now. So over time, you start to see patterns. And I was finding that my consultees were getting stuck in all the same places. It had to do with not having eyes to see readiness capacities. And then they'd get in the woods and it would not be so good and be really messy and, laborious and tricky to kind of find their way out. And if they had a readiness rubric that they could have used from the front end, they could have been preparing adequately to develop out those readiness capacities before they jumped into the processing. Additionally, target sequence planning. There's so much about, you can just start anywhere. You can, just focus on, low hanging fruit, something that's more recent, all of that. But then you run into all of these issues with kind of really piecemeal results, with feeder memories blocking your way, with just all sorts of things. That's, for a whole nother talk, but there's so much that can go into good target sequence planning that can help your work be so much more efficient and effective because you know where you're going and why, and you know exactly what you are aiming to move in the present in terms of your client's response patterns, their symptoms, their suffering, all of that, what's triggering them to relapse in certain ways in terms of their functioning overall or their behaviors that they're trying to change, all of that. And so you can be tracking that and the impact of your work by seeing changes in frequency, intensity, and duration. There's so many amazing things you can do here, but it needs to be structured. And so I started to see patterns with that where it was like, okay, I'm teaching that. I'm teaching readiness capacities. I'm teaching target sequence planning. And then I'm also teaching things around certain blocking beliefs that are coming up around attachment and attachment strategies that have been developed as adaptations to early life. So much, again, patterns that I finally said, okay, I need to develop something out that teaches these things. So I'm not spending consultation teaching these things. So what I did was I created a course. I first started with just a readiness course. And then now, I've developed out a much more extensive course that really helps consultees understand the AIP model, understand complex trauma, attachment, all of those things in ways that they can then pass on and explain to their clients in very, accessible ways. But then also all of these different pieces that are the things that everybody needed to know, but it's now in a course. And so it meets Andrea's standards where you need to have an advanced course towards certification. But what it does is it solidifies the very basic pieces that are necessary to be able to do standard protocol well with the complexity of the clients we see. And so with my students, what I have been saying is like, here's the thing, like take this coursework and then we talk it through. We talk through the questions you have. We talk about the application of these things with your actual cases. And that way I'm not teaching you, we're focused on integrating. And the way that I love to do that in terms of structuring the process is we start with groups. So you're taking that course, you're having a group, and everybody's asking the questions backwards and forwards about like, how do you do this? What does this mean? That sort of thing. So you're getting that benefit of sort of, like group confusion as well as group clarification and that normalization that this is a lot. And then you're also getting that sense of structure too. You have to watch this amount of the coursework before you show up. So there's a bit of an accountability aspect that keeps you moving through the course material and then also helps you really, really deeply digest it. And then we move into individual. And there's a couple different pieces here. I do love a fidelity checklist, but I don't love it as a test for my consultees. I love it as a self-reflection exercise. So I ask my consultees to do that at the beginning of their work with me. Do the fidelity checklist that's in the back of the textbook. Test yourself. See what phrases don't make sense to you? What phrases you're like, oh, I know I heard about this, but I have no idea what that actually means in real life, or I really struggle with doing it in real life. And so that way they can bring an honest, I don't know-ness to the conversation. And then we can dig in there. And I ask them to do that at the beginning when they do a case presentation, which is their skills verification, and then at the end of our work together. And it's so fun to see that arc of confidence. And that way they really know they know standard protocol, even though we're talking about all these applications to complexity, they know the real deal in terms of Francine Shapiro's model. And they know what isn't that. And they know the proper terms, but they also know what they mean and why and how to think around them. They know how to say like, okay, this is how I would word this thing kind of standardly, but these are 6 other ways I can say it that would mean the same thing if my client needs me to adjust a bit or needs me to explain it differently, that sort of thing. Or I just need to do something a little differently here. I can explain why. There's so many pieces about learning how to think in EMDR that I feel like the group lays a foundation for, and then we really, really, really get into the nuanced details when we're working in individual consultation. The other thing that I think is both intimidating, but so critical about individual consultation is the skills verification. What I ask my consultees to do is present a single case. So they need to walk through all of how they assess readiness capacities. And if they had a point where they said like, oh, this one isn't so strong, this capacity needs to be developed out, how did they do that? What was their strategy around that? And what was the result? And then what is their target sequence plan? And what's their rationale for choosing whether or not they did comprehensive target sequence planning that we teach in our trainings, or they did symptom focused? And then what does that target sequence plan look like, where they're spelling out their present triggers, the key past memories, and then that touchstone, that origin memory, where that primary negative cognition theme was planted originally. Like, where are they at with that? What all have they mapped out? And then they're showing me a video of a specific processing session where they are processing one of those targets for the first time. And so they show me where that is on that target sequence plan. And then they're showing me a video of lighting up that processing, activating a target with phase 3, moving into reprocessing, showing me where there's interweaves that they needed to address, blocks that they needed to address, all of that, how they did that, how they did closure and reevaluation, and also installation and body scan if they happen to get there in that session. Otherwise, we're talking it through. And in doing all of that, they're really able to get real-time feedback that helps me optimize what they're doing. Now, there are times, many times, when I will say, hey, I need another video that shows me this. I need to see this again. But what happens in that is they become so much more confident in the end, because I was able to give them tips on things that they never could have asked about, or I'm able to say, hey, tweak this. You're getting in your own way in this way, or hey, you need to set up in this way. And they never would have known that they were doing something in a way that wasn't as effective as it could be. And so I love that piece of our work together. And the feedback I consistently get is that it was intimidating and it was hard, but it was their favorite part because it mattered the most in them becoming able to really, like, I guess I keep saying optimize their work, optimize their effectiveness, and ultimately optimize their confidence that they could do this work well. So here's my plug. Don't walk into the garage without adequate gearing up, without adequate guidance on how you're going to manage all the things you're going to get when you're going to need to address when you get there. And there's ways to feel much more competent, and there's ways to feel much more secure in this work. And there is so much to learn. And having someone really be a mentor in that process and help you get the basics, get the understanding of how to apply the basics to complexity. And then, guidance on where to go next, and to have a safe enough relationship where you can be both challenged, but also supported and cheered on. Like, that matters. Ultimately, it's a manifestation, ideally, of exactly what we talk about when we talk about secure attachment. It's providing all of that attunement, nurture, support, guidance, all of that, so that you are protected when you go into the garage, so that you know what you're doing and you know how to navigate all of that well. So if you would like to find out more about what we do with Precision, either for basic training, consultation, certification, all of that, reach out. If you have questions about any of this, drop a comment or email me at susie@precisionemdr.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Precision EMDR. So anyways, thank you so much for joining me. And I really hope that you continue on. And this helps you think bigger about what it means to actually build fluency and competence and confidence as an EMDR therapist.